Hey y'all, I just finished watching Legend of the Female General. When Haeyeon's elder brother turns out to be sickly, she is forced to take his place and be raised as a boy. Haeyeon is able to gain military achievements and become a general, but she is forced to give this up when Harufe, her older brother, returns. When her family tries to cover up this secret by having her killed, Haeyeon manages to survive and start over. This time, she is helped by her former classmate, Xiaozhe. So this show is based on Chen Shan-cheke's Rebirth of a Star General, which I read sometime back in the spring, but you can find it on my page. The show is currently available on Viki and I want to say iQIYI. So I ultimately gave it about a 7.5, but I think if you liked Legend of Shen Li, you would like this one as well, even though this one is purely war and martial arts and whatnot, whereas Shen Li is more of a gods and demons, but still war situation. If you've seen my review of Rebirth of a Star General, you'll have heard me say that I thought Legend of the Female General was going to be just like another version of Legend of Shen Li, but like I said, they're doing two different things, but it still comes down to powerful female general, you know? So if that's up your alley, definitely watch both of them. So the show does a couple of things right, a lot of things wrong, and in my personal opinion, you really are better off reading the book. Well, after you watch the show, because it's not a terrible show, but if you don't plan to watch the show, read the book. Read the book. After deciding to get into Chinese web novels, I've kind of pretty much cut out on watching shows if I've read the novels first. But I really wanted to see how the show would handle Haeyeon's rebirth. And honestly, a lot of the changes were not egregious. It just happened that the script did not commit to them. That's what made it bad in the end. The changes being bad, not the whole show. Like the decision to have Haeyeon be connected to Xiaozhe's dad via the swords, and then have Xiaozhe's dad's death be the first thing that happens in the show, and also make it so that the difference between when Xiaozhe basically has to go avenge his dad and Haeyeon showing up at the military camp be like 2 months. In my opinion, it was a small change. I still felt like it was a stupid change. But the way you don't feel it in the show as much, but just knowing how everything goes, it's just a terrible change. Like it kind of topples the structure of the show if you really think about it. Why do I say that? In the book, the timeline essentially goes like this. Haeyeon is raised as a boy. Around the age of 14, she gets to go to this academy. At the academy, she meets Xiaozhe. They are in school together for about a year, right? You are of the impression that they are 14, 15. At the end of that year, Xiaozhe's dad dies, and he decides to go and avenge his father and restore his family's honor. Haeyeon just up and decides to join the army, really just to get away from a really stupid engagement. These two do not see each other for what we assume is about 3-4 years, you know? At that point, they are essentially peer generals. And then I want to say you give it about another year, because Haeyeon ends up having to give her brother everything. She gets married, she goes blind. These two meet again at a temple. No, the meeting and the blindness happens within that year, and then Haeyeon dies. The story resets, and within 2 weeks to a month of her dying, she wakes up again as Haeyeon, a different Haeyeon, who is technically younger. I want to say about 16, whereas the original Haeyeon had to have died at about 19, 20. So you're assuming Xiaozhe is about 2021. Yeah, 2021 when he meets the second Haeyeon. The show doesn't allow Haeyeon to get married. Like her being killed, her switching back with her brother and being killed is about a 1 week difference. 3 if we're being cute. And like I say, Xiaoju's dad's death is the beginning of the show. So it looks like a 2 months difference between the time he dies and the time Heian shows up at camp. Why does any of this matter? Episode 22 is based on an arc, or episode 22 has an arc that starts like as soon as Xiaoju goes to avenge his father, like as he's getting ready to leave, like everything goes down, he's getting ready to leave to go avenge his father. That's when this arc starts. And by the time you get to episode 22, you're thinking about it like a year, maybe 14 months at best have gone by in this story. So when you see that arc and then you recognize that in the TV show, they show you them being in school at 14, 15. They don't actually tell you how much time has gone past at all. They don't show you anything to show Heian actually like training or anything with Xiaoju's dad. They just show like her getting the sword from Xiaoju's dad. So when you consider the events that happen in episode 22 and the non-timeline of the show in itself, the entire script begins to fall apart. In my opinion, throw episode 22 all the way out, because that's where shit gets unnecessarily shaky. But like I said, some of the changes were not bad. Like some we don't get the younger her siblings, which makes me a little bit sad, but you get it. You don't have the time for it. We don't get the explanations about the backstories for Heian's camp buddies, which in my opinion works out because all of them live to the end of the story. We don't get Yanha being a bully, which in my opinion made his transformation into being a wife guy and like a for real war hero so poignant. But I'll give the show that they tried to stay relatively faithful to the original story and they kept the same beats for the most part. I like the fact that even though there is a romance going on, even though the base of this story really is Heian gaining back all her military achievements, ultimately this is a war story. There is a passive war going on in the background of the story, and then it becomes fully active in episode 36, which is how the story intends for it to be. And I really appreciate that the show really kind of shows you that Xiaoju and Heian are soulmates. But I hate that we lose the jokes in the background or like the comedic timings in the background of everyone thinking that these two are gay. Right up until we find out that Heian is a girl, all of their camp people think those two are gay. Like they try to show you this because of Fennu, but it don't hit the same because Fennu doesn't have people to like have those conversations back and forth with, or they don't give any time to that. Also, making Chuzhou a melancholic character throughout the whole thing and then randomly having like a moment of insanity in episode 35, I want to say, that was stupid. I get that you want a second love interest, but it was just unnecessary to do that. But yeah, ultimately I did think the show was relatively okay, and it's probably pretty good if you never read the book. But if you can't read the book, read the book. Rebirth of a Star General by Chan Shan Chaka. I'm telling you, it's worth the read. Part of me wants to recommend it as a palate cleanser or just an opposite after you've watched The Double, because they're both from the same author. The Double is based on Marriage of the D-Daughter. And if I know anything about that, I know anything about the author, like you kind of notice their motif when you look at all the characters. But again, because I've never watched The Double, I don't want y'all to like feel like, yeah, it's perfect, and turns out it's not. But yeah, if you like soulmates, women and men's feels, and war stories, then this one is for you. I'm not going to do a part 2 for this, but I did thread every episode. I basically did every episode on Thread. So if you'd like to see my thoughts on that, let me know. I'll tell you what my username is.